Hey, it's Stace here from Sacred Art and Story, and today I'm going to do a little bit of 2D needle felting, kind of painting with wool, if you will. And I'll show you a little bit about how to do that if it's something that you've never done before and you want to give it a try. But it's kind of on my mind today because this past weekend I did a workshop here in my studio where I invited some women to come and really just kind of make whatever they wanted to make. Like there was no real structure. I just let them loose with all of my supplies, whether it was collage or doing some needle felting. And a couple of the women wanted to try out some of this 2D needle felting. And they never done it before. They had not really thought about what they wanted to do. There was no pattern they wanted to follow. But it was actually coming out of a meditation that we did, and they really were kind of wanting just to like blend some colors. And what we ended up talking about a lot through the class was kind of this sense of like the beginner's mind with something. And when you don't even know what you want to make and you just start doing something to see what's going to happen, and kind of how uncomfortable that can be a little bit. And it kind of got me really thinking about, like this idea of like, why can't we just come back to letting our creativity be play? When we were kids, we never looked up to see what something looked like and then did it, right? We just did it, right? We just like played to see what was going to happen. And we usually really loved what we created. We were super proud of it. And one of the things that kind of kept coming up during the workshop was somebody kept saying, I feel like this is my 5-year-old making this thing. Like it looks like a 5-year-old made it. And at one point we all cheered her because yay, her 5-year-old had made this thing, like her inner 5-year-old had come out. And to me, it was really beautiful and really transformative. And I think that we need more of that. I think that we need more time to just create things that, are just made in the moment. We don't really know why we're making them or what we're making, but kind of let our inner kid come out and just see what happens and let it be really playful. So I'm going to walk you through me doing some 2D art that feels really playful to me. And I hope that you give yourself opportunity to maybe try this out or try something else out that feels really playful and childlike. Just to kind of have that experience because it does transform us in a really beautiful way. So let me show you what I made today. Okay, I'm going to do some 2D needle felting and just play today. That's kind of what I wanted to do. So I'm not going to work off a pattern. I'm going to make a butterfly, I decided. And I kind of know the shape and I really don't care if it comes out wonky looking. I just want to have some time to be creating today. And I think that's really important. So what do I have going on here? I've got a felting pad. This is actually a felt pad that I work off of. You can see it's pretty used and messy. You could use like a pad like this, which is just a little foam pad that you often get. That can work. I'm going to be working onto a piece of felt that I made. This was something that I had wet felted, actually, where I had taken wool like this, just kind of batting, and made a piece of felt, really. And it was for a doll that I was going to make a skirt out of this, and then I decided I wasn't going to do it. So I just have this, and I thought, why not use it? So I'm working off of this. Sometimes if you're doing 2D felting, you might start with just a regular old piece of felt. You can absolutely do that. It doesn't even have to be really fancy felt if you're just kind of getting started. I use this kind of felt that I've just picked up from the craft store whenever I'm making my little felty faces like this. When I make little dolls, sometimes I'll make faces out of felt instead of clay. And this is just started by like a little round piece of felt, and then I've felted onto it and added more and more felt and more wool, and made a little face. So it'll stick to this for sure. You can also use linen, pre-felt, which is a thinner felt that's not fully felted. So many different things that you can do, but if you're just getting started, a regular old piece of felt will work. And I've got some needles here. I'm just going to mostly be using just kind of your basic workhorse needle. Any old needle that you have in a kit can work. You just kind of want to make sure that you kind of hear it. You want to make sure that when you're felting, you're sort of punching down and it's connecting, into the thing that you're felting onto. Sometimes you can use a little tool like this where you've got more needles in there. I've got 3 needles in here and it just kind of speeds things up. So I've got one of those handy. And then I've got a bunch of wool that I've pulled and just some colors. And of course, this is batting. And I think batting is always easier to work with when you're needle felting compared to roving, which is sort of that long, thin strand that you might get. This hasn't been processed as much, so it's got fibers going in every direction and it will just sort of needle felt faster for you. So I've got maybe 3 or 4 colors that I might kind of play with. Haven't decided if I'm gonna, I'll probably start with a blue butterfly. And that's it. So I'm just gonna kind of go for it and see what happens. So let's do it. Just to get started with wool too, when you start to pull these apart, you see that there's sort of a direction that pulls a little bit easier. Like this is pulling a little bit harder than this. This is just kind of opening up like butter. So I'm gonna just kind of pull off pieces and really kind of put it like it's paint, in a sense. I kind of know where my middle is here. Kind of know where my middle is. And I'm just gonna kind of lay it out. I want to keep it the same thickness, as much as I can, but I can always add more and I can shape it once I kind of get a sense of the shape that I want. I can kind of come in and push it in here and kind of make it a particular shape. But I'm gonna just kind of get a general idea of what I want and then I'll poke it in. And this was kind of what the women in my class were doing. They weren't making butterflies, although one woman's kind of made a butterfly, which I think is kind of why I'm thinking about butterflies. But it was really interesting as particularly one of the women was doing this. She was just like, I don't really know what I'm making. I'm actually having a lot of fun. Like, this is really fun and really relaxing. But she's like, I don't have a clue what this is going to be. And it's just sort of looking like my inner 5-year-old was sort of, making this thing. And I was kind of like, that's awesome. I don't know how much she felt like it was awesome, but we were really talking about how, like that struggle between perfectionism and wanting it to look absolutely perfect, like not your 5-year-old making it, but your 55-year-old making it. Like it should be perfect. You should know what you're doing. And this was the very first time she'd ever even heard of this kind of needle felting. So I'll come back to the story in a second, but what I'm doing here is I'm just poking. I'm poking in. I don't need to poke all the way through. I don't need to do that, but I just need to poke in enough that we start to see this flatten out and kind of adhere to the back. And there's probably a point where I'll have to keep pulling this all the way off because I can feel already I'm kind of attaching it to the pad. That's okay. It's going to be messy on the back end a little bit. But I'm going to just kind of keep poking, and I just really gently, wherever I might want to bring in a shape, I poke it into that shape. And I'll show you that in a second as I kind of get to the edge. Again, I'm not following a pattern. This is just my mind. My imagination is taking over and I'm kind of letting it happen. And I'm working on just sort of creating a nice clean edge here, kind of folding it over a little bit. So back to the story. So during this class, this woman like kind of repeatedly just kept saying, "Gosh, I feel like my 5-year-old is making this." And I don't think she expected at one point that the rest of us would cheer. Like we literally were all like, "Yay, your 5-year-old is like coming out. Like this is great. Like you're letting your inner child really have some fun with this." And I kept saying I would hang the thing up. She wasn't sure. She just thought it was sort of like a weird little thing that she made. And I was like, I would personally hang that up and just sort of be like, oh yeah, my inner child got to come out this day, and I'm gonna keep it for a little while, just to remember that. And we kind of got in this conversation as a group of like this idea of sort of like that discomfort, right? Of like how that can actually even kind of shape resiliency, for us if we're willing to be in that place of not knowing and feeling really uncomfortable with things for a little while. It can kind of create a bit of a neural pathway, that of a place of trust, that something will come out of it. We don't know what yet, but something can really come out of not knowing. And even if you don't make the beautiful thing that you're hoping, like I don't know what this is gonna look like, even if you don't make that beautiful thing, you were willing to be in that place of just playful creativity and letting sort of the part of you that doesn't need to direct, have some fun and kind of come out and be willing to just see what might happen. And I think that's just really important. And it was kind of interesting because as we started talking about this, the woman who was doing this had said that she had done some kind of inner child work, earlier in the day. And I'm like, well, there we go. Like, this is it. To me, when we get into sacred art and kind of make things so that they can feel kind of beautiful to us, the thing that we make isn't really the important part. It's what happens while we make it, like, and what we feel while we make these things. And does it create anxiety? So what's that about? Like, is it about that the messages that we've gotten all along, in our lives of how we're not creative or how we should be doing things perfectly? Does shame come up? I think all of that is really important. And, especially if we can kind of step back and give ourselves some acceptance and forgiveness and some love, in that moment, it's really healing. All right, so I've got lots of extra here. I can actually even just kind of come and pull some off and kind of even it out a little bit. And I just sort of tuck it in and smooth it out to create a shape that I want. It's turning into a heart. Speaking of self-love and acceptance, it might be fun to kind of give it a little bit of a shape like that. So I don't want to use my needle and pull it because that'll break the needle. But I can come in and I can poke in a direction and it'll poke it in. Yeah, so I'm gonna keep playing here, but I want to just be like, yeah, let your 5-year-old out. Like, the more that we can do that kind of thing, the more powerful I think our art becomes, of being willing to be in that place of discomfort and trying something new. Because how do you know if you'll like it if you don't try it? But how can we be good at something if we don't have, the opportunity to practice? I make all kinds of things that I think are just like pretty wonky looking. And sometimes I keep them and sometimes I turn them into other things. And and sometimes I dismantle them, and sometimes I just simply let them go because they are kind of wonky and weird and a little too much. But I get to learn how to do things. And we just don't give ourselves opportunity for that kind of learning, and the tolerance for being in that uncomfortable place is just, it's not there, because we just see so much art that we have these expectations all the time. I say this here all the time, like there's always these expectations that we're going to make something beautiful, but I think the wonky and the weird and the wonderful, to me is great. There's an artist, I know, what's her name? Sarah Hand? Somebody will know who's watching this. She makes some really fun and funky little things that look like her inner child is definitely the one making it. And I love her art. Like, it's just so childlike. And I think that sometimes the more that we can do that kind of thing, the more like playful we can kind of let ourselves be. I just love that. So here I am. I'm trying to kind of figure out what to do here. I think I've got too much over here. I'm just going to pull it off. I can always add more, right? And I'll try to get a little bit of the same shape going for my little butterfly here. Poke this guy in first. I find this kind of needle felting, and this is kind of one of the things that the women who were trying this, they were like, wow, this is so relaxing. And that's why I don't really care what I make right now. I might even, I could pull it all off if I want to. It's more just having a chance to do the art, in the first place, to kind of just poke and kind of have just a moment where I can be in that place of kind of tranquility. That's what needle felting is always like for me. The repetition and just being able to kind of have motion, like a repetitive motion, is very meditative for me. Gives me a chance to just start to listen within. Okay, now I gotta get this piece to look like the other piece, the other side. Yeah, and I'm gonna pull it off. I felted it to my pad, and you can see it gets a bit of a mess on this side. If you poke it through back to here, you'll mess this side up. So I let the back be a little bit of a mess because nobody's gonna see that. If I put it on, put it on something or hang it, nobody will see the back. But that's the reason why you don't need to poke all the way through deep, super deep. You just want to poke onto the backing to get this to stick. And then I'm just kind of going through here, and I'm looking for where I might have little bumps, little air pockets, and I want to kind of felt those down just so that it's much can be sort of even. You're always going to see some little holes because you're needle felting, but at the end, if you see some holes, you can always kind of do this and kind of rub it. It's going to be a wonky looking butterfly, that is for sure. All right, let's see if we can get this looking more butterfly-like. I'm going to do some dark in here, not that thick. To me, this is kind of the fun of not having a pattern, of just sort of seeing what happens. Is that, it is a little challenging to sort of be like, can my imagination take over? Is it gonna look like my 5-year-old made it? Yeah, probably. And I'm actually totally fine with that, especially after um, kind of this weekend, because I'm like, you know what? Let my 5-year-old have some fun. Does it look a little wonky? Absolutely. But you know, when we were kids and we were drawing and coloring, we didn't go look up what a butterfly looked like. We just made it. And we hung it up on the refrigerator and we're super proud of it. And how do we get back to that kind of like relationship with our creativity? You know, we can't if we're constantly shooting and aiming for perfection. Something. So to get something really, really thin, you can just kind of take your wool and almost roll it and kind of make a nice little thin piece. I'm gonna make it shorter, but then I can come in and almost make just like a thin line and kind of poke it. And then wherever I want my little round part, right? Because butterflies have little round bits, I can add that in. Do butterflies have little legs like this? I guess mine do. Mine do. All right, now here comes the fun part. Let's put some yellow on. And maybe do a little extra something something in here just to see. It's all about the playing at this point. Just having some fun, just kind of giving myself a chance to be creative today. That was my goal, right? Not to make a masterpiece, but to make something that I might just like smile about later. And I think that's just as important as making a really deep, like, art journal entry. Just letting your intuition like have some room to see what you want to make. What if we gave ourselves an hour a week, you know, to do something where it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be playful. Where we get to try something new. Ta-da! Just something fun and playful to do today to kind of get me thinking about my little inner 5-year-old. That's really what I wanted. I think it needs a teeny tiny bit more here, and then I will say it is done. But this is how you can do a little 2D needle felting. Kind of fun, kind of easy, nothing really hard. You can do it with anything, making flowers. You can start with a pattern, but you could also just sort of see what you create and have a little fun and let your inner 5-year-old out and be willing to just be like, that's part of creativity today, of making something silly and playful that maybe means a little something to you. So I hope you do. So this is my final piece. This is what I made. I stopped the video before I put all the words in, so I wanted to show you this because this is the message for today. Let art be play, right? Yeah, let's play.